The Lost City was directed by Aaron and Adam Nee, and it primarily stars Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum, but it also has quite a few other great recognizable faces such as Daniel Radcliffe, Oscar Nunez, and Brad Pitt, just to name a few. It's ultimately about a romance novelist, Loretta, played by Bullock, that often writes about romances amidst a great treasure-seeking adventure, and when she gets kidnapped to assist in a real-life treasure-seeking expedition, her cover model Alan, played by Tatum, jumps at the chance to save her life, even if he is a little bit bumbling and not as suave as the character that he models for. Now, this was kind of a refreshing comedy. It blends together typical tropes that you would find in a modern comedy while also borrowing from much older adventure films like Indiana Jones, for instance. When it does that, you get a really nice blend of adventure and comedy. I mean, if horror was sprinkled in, then this would be pretty close to what I felt about The Mummy. But this is much more about comedy than anything else, and in a lot of ways, it's the best comedy that I've seen in a long while. I had fun with it. I had fun with everybody who was in the movie for sure, but it wouldn't have really worked as well as it did without our two leads. Both Channing Tatum and Sandra Bullock have a long history of playing in comedies, more so with Bullock than with Tatum, but they're both arguably seasoned in the genre, so it's not that big of a surprise to see that they have a lot of fantastic on-screen comedic chemistry and timing with one another. And it's crazy, because the age difference between the two of them is something like 15 years. But you don't really think about that. You don't really sense it. You don't really see it. You know that there is an age difference, but it feels much more like maybe 6 years of a difference at most. You don't sit there and think, well, when Sandra Bullock was graduating high school, Channing Tatum was 3 years old. You don't think about that. Because they're both funny, charming, lovable, beautiful people. They always have been. And they both have a history in comedy and action, again, more so with Sandra Bullock, who has played in a variety of different genres. I mean, I remember a few years ago, Sandra Bullock was like,
I am no longer gonna do any more rom-coms ever again!
And you know, for the most part, she's kept up with that and stayed out of that world. Not that I think that that was ever necessary. She was good in that kind of role. You don't need to cut out one genre to stay away from being typecast or whatever. You just turn down those roles every now and then. But you know, whatever, I digress. I'm getting off topic. It is important though, because The Lost City in a way is a bit of a rom-com. And a rom-com that I genuinely think works for both women and men. And that's a really important distinction to make nowadays, because men run for the hills whenever you bring up rom-coms. But because this is a blend, I think that there's a lot going on here that a lot of different people can appreciate. The mystery, or the treasure-seeking aspect of the film, isn't bad at all. It feels a little bit like a MacGuffin, as a lot of treasure hunting movies do, but technically, it was a better treasure hunt than what you see in the Uncharted movie. And the payoff at the end was, again, refreshing and not fully what you would expect. Daniel Radcliffe is a great villainous character. Brad Pitt is hilarious. It's not the kind of movie that's trying to win any kind of awards or anything. It's just trying to entertain, and entertain it does. Again, I had a good time with the movie, and I generally consider it to be rewatchable. So with that being said, let's talk about my final score for a second. So from a technical or unbiased perspective, I will be giving this an 80% because technically the film is put together really well. There's a really great focus on things like cinematography, editing, dialogue, and character. The acting specifically is pretty much what you would expect out of these assortment of cast members. I mean, for instance, you're probably going to be watching this because it is Sandra Bullock and because it is Channing Tatum, more so than who they're playing. Not that they're playing bad characters, but that's not why you're watching. So the characters themselves are fine, they're just not extremely well developed, and there's not a hugely challenging display of acting. But for what it is, the film still works extremely well from a technical vantage point, so again, that is 80%, and so is the bias score, or how I personally felt about the movie. You know, that's also going to be getting 80% because as far as comedies go, I think that it's pretty darn funny. As far as adventures go, I felt as if it was pretty exciting and refreshing. As far as romance goes, the chemistry feels appropriate and naturally develops and evolves over the course of the film. That means that when we combine the two scores together, we obviously come to the final rating of 80%, 80 out of 100 possible stars, or a B+ letter grade on my letter grading scale. Now, what about you fellers? Let me know if you've seen this movie in the comments down below, what you thought about it as well. And as for YouTube, you guys know what to do. Hit that like, hit the subscribe button, and hit the bell to be notified when I come out with my next review. And until then, peace out.